Hey guys, it's James here from eBassGuitar. And does music theory baffle you? If so, make sure you check out this lesson all the way to the end, because we've got 5 tips to help you finally start understanding music theory. Hey guys, it's James here from eBassGuitar, and in today's lesson I want to give you 5 tips to finally understanding how music theory works for bass guitar. First off, I see so many of my students struggle with music theory. It is this real kind of grey area which leaves them completely baffled. One of the things that I've discovered over the past 15 years of paying my mortgage as a professional bass player is the music theory that really matters. I'm talking about the stuff that you use on a day-to-day basis. So it's really important to start drilling down into that stuff. So I'm going to give you my top 5 tips to get you going on this. Now, there is a free cheat sheet that comes with this lesson. It's called 5 Steps to Learning and Applying Music Theory. There is a link below in the description where you can grab your copy of this. And lastly, before we hit the lesson, this is all part of a much bigger project called the Ultimate Music Theory Bootcamp for Bass Guitar, which we are just about to release at eBassGuitar. Again, there is a link below in the description where you can find out more about the Ultimate Music Theory Bootcamp for bass guitar. So let's get straight down to it. Tip number 1 is to learn the basics of how to play the piano. The piano is the most important instrument that we need to understand to really get the most out of our music theory. It's kind of that instrument which everything else relates back to. The reason being, it is a very visual instrument. You can see all of the notes on there very clearly laid out. Also, each note only appears once on the piano too. The complicated thing that we start getting with bass guitar is there are often 2 or 3 ways that we can play the same patterns. So let me just play a C major triad, for instance. We can play it like this. We can play it like that with the open string. We can play it going forward there like that. So I found 4 ways of playing exactly the same thing, and that can start to make things quite tricky. With the piano, we just get it in one place. So the next sort of sub tip I want to give you is, if you don't have a piano, what you can do now is grab an iPhone app. And I've got one here. I think it's called Virtuoso. I can't see the name on there, but there are loads out there which simulate the piano. So if you need to voice out, say, a C major triad, so hear what it sounds like, what you can do is just go like that, and you can actually hear what the chord sounds like, and that is super useful. So I really encourage you to get down some really basic piano. It doesn't have to be complicated whatsoever, but just being able to find the notes on the keyboard will be really helpful. Tip number 2 is don't mix sharps and flats if you can help it. When we learn the basic notes of music, which is A, B, C, D, E, F, and G, we also have these sharps and flats like D flat and E flat, or F sharp and G flat. And what you'll discover is they're actually the same note but with 2 different names. And that can be super confusing. So what I like to get my students to do is, when they are learning the names of the notes and memorizing going up the fretboard like so, I like them to use sharps going up, I'll demonstrate in just a second, and flats going down. So you compartmentalize the sharps and you compartmentalize the flats. Let me demonstrate. So we go E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A sharp, B, C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E. And we've got to the octave at the 12th fret where everything restarts again. Now coming back, I'm going to use flats instead of sharps. So we're going to go E, E flat, D, D flat, C, B, B flat, A flat, G, G flat, F, and E. Because the reason we do this is when we start getting to play scales in just a little while, we tend to have sharp scales that use sharps and scales that use flats. And so you don't ever tend to mix sharps and flats in the same scale. That certainly goes for major scales to begin with. So when you're starting out, sharps going up, flats going down when you're learning the neck chromatically. So tip number 3 is to learn the major scale and internalize it as quickly as you possibly can. There's a very, very set structure to it of whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. And that will work across any major scale on the fingerboard and in music in general. So really understand that, because absolutely everything in Western music derives back to the major scale. Even more complicated minor harmony, crazy patterns, etc., etc. You can normally always trace back to the fundamentals of the major scale. And also 90% of pop music, I would guess, that you're going to start off playing in your early phases of learning the bass guitar uses harmony that is directly related to the major scale. So get this whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step formula under your belt at the earliest possible opportunity, and really get the sound of that into your head. Tip number 4 is learn the Roman numeral chord system or the Nashville number system. They are effectively the same thing, but with 2 different names. So if we take this idea of the major scale a step forward, what we can do is we can build a chord or a triad off each degree of the scale. So that is the triad which comes off chord 1, and then we have like that, which is a minor triad, another minor triad, major triad, another major triad, minor triad, and then we have this flat 5 triad at the end, which is a little bit of the exception. So within the major scale, what we end up with is a series of major triads and minor triads, all kind of mixed together. But this gives us the foundation of so many pop songs, which is really, really important, because we can start to understand how chord sequences now relate to each other. Because within C major, we're also going to get a D minor, an E minor, an F, a G, an A minor, and then this B minor flat 5 at the end. So hopefully you can see how we're building up the amount of information that we can find in the major scale and why it is super, super important. So tip number 5 is learn chord tones, not modes. As I said earlier in this video, there is so much information within the major scale. What we can do is we can actually derive 6 further scales from the major scale. And so you may have heard names like Dorian, Lydian, Phrygian, etc., etc. And these are the modal names. And as I said, there's so much information in there that I've seen many of my students start to get super confused just learning these, and then even more confused when they start to actually have to apply them. So what I prefer to do is when you see a chord written down is you outline the chord tones. The chord tones are effectively the same as a thing called arpeggios, which are the root, the third, the fifth, and the seventh. Within the root, the third, the fifth, and the seventh, there is all the most important information that we need to create really, really great bass lines and do our job really well as a bass player. So if you want to find out more about chord tones and how modes work, etc., etc., make sure you check out the Ultimate Music Theory Bootcamp, where I'll be taking all of this great stuff apart in depth and showing you how it works in the real world. There is a link below this post where you can check out more information about the course. So guys, that is the end of this lesson. So don't forget, there is a free checklist you can grab, 5 steps to learning and applying music theory checklist. Also, if you've enjoyed this lesson, please do give it a like and share on social. If you've got any questions, please do comment below. I've been James from eBassGuitar.com, and I'll catch you next time. Cheers for now.